Willow Creek was a quiet town, nestled in a valley, surrounded by rolling hills and dense forests. It was the kind of place where everyone knew everyone else, and life moved at a slower, more peaceful pace. Big old trees lined the streets, their branches forming a canopy that provided shade in the summer and a beautiful display of colors in the fall. The trees were as much a part of the town as the people who lived there. But the woods at the edge of town, they were off limits. The dense forest was a place of mystery and fear, a stark contrast to the safety and familiarity of the town. Every kid in Willow Creek knew the rule: don't go into the woods after dark. It was a rule passed down from generation to generation, a warning that was never questioned. Why not? Little kids always asked, their eyes wide with curiosity and a hint of fear. The woods seemed so inviting during the day, but the thought of them at night was terrifying. Older kids and grown-ups always had the same answer: the shadow takers. It was a name that sent shivers down the spines of even the bravest children. Nobody ever explained who or what the shadow takers were. They were just a part of the town's lore, a dark presence that kept the children in line. That was the scary part, the unknown. The fear of what might be lurking in the shadows, waiting to snatch up any child who dared to venture into the woods after dark. Most kids were too scared to even think about breaking the rule. They would play near the edge of the forest during the day, but as soon as the sun began to set, they would hurry home. But not Max. Max was 11, almost 12, and thought he was braver than everyone else. He was determined to uncover the truth about the shadow takers, no matter what it took. "You won't do it," Max's best friend Ben said, his voice filled with a mix of disbelief and concern. Max, always the daredevil, just smirked. They were standing at the edge of the woods, a place that had always been shrouded in mystery and fear. The dense trees seemed to whisper secrets of the past. The sun was setting, turning the sky a fiery orange. The colors painted a dramatic backdrop, making the woods look even more ominous. "I will," Max said, his voice steady but his heart racing. He took a step closer to the trees, feeling the cool air from the forest brush against his skin. The boundary between safety and the unknown was just a few steps away. Their shadows stretched out long and thin, reaching towards him like grasping fingers. The eerie shapes seemed to come alive in the fading light. "Don't, Max," Ben pleaded, his voice trembling. "It's not worth it. What if the shadow takers are real?" Ben's eyes were wide with fear, the stories of the shadow takers echoing in his mind. "They're not real," Max scoffed, even though a shiver ran down his spine. He tried to hide his fear, but the tales of the shadow takers haunted him too. He took another step, and then another, until he was swallowed up by the darkness of the woods. The forest seemed to close in around him, the shadows growing thicker with each step. At first, everything was quiet. The only sounds were Max's own footsteps and the beating of his heart. Then he heard it, a faint whisper. He stopped, holding his breath. It came again, closer this time. He couldn't make out the words, but it sounded like his name. He spun around, trying to see who was talking, but the trees were too thick. He was surrounded by shadows. Suddenly the air grew cold. Max felt a presence behind him. He didn't dare turn around. He just ran. He ran faster than he had ever run before, but the whispers followed him. They were getting louder now, angrier. He could hear the rustling of leaves, the snapping of twigs, as if something was chasing him. He glanced over his shoulder and saw them. Dark shapes were moving between the trees, their edges blurring and shifting like smoke. Max tripped and fell, scraping his hands on the rough ground. The pain shot through his palms, but he knew he couldn't stop. The forest was dense, and the shadows seemed to close in on him. He scrambled to his feet, his heart pounding in his chest. Each breath felt like fire in his lungs, but he pushed forward, driven by sheer willpower and fear. He could see the edge of the woods now, a faint glimmer of hope in the distance. The trees thinned out, and the oppressive darkness began to lift slightly. He had to get out. The stories of the shadow takers echoed in his mind, fueling his determination. He couldn't let them catch him. Just when he thought he wouldn't make it, a hand reached out and grabbed his arm. It was Ben, his best friend, who had come looking for him when he didn't return. He pulled Max out of the woods and into the safety of the streetlight. The sudden brightness was almost blinding, but it brought a sense of relief. They stood there, panting for a long moment. The adrenaline slowly faded. replaced by a profound sense of gratitude and exhaustion. Max had never been so happy to see the lights of town. The familiar glow of the streetlights and the distant hum of life were comforting. He never went near the woods after dark again. The memory of that night was enough to keep him away, and he never, ever doubted the stories about the shadow takers. The tales that once seemed like mere folklore now held a chilling truth.